This is the Amy Edwards Show.
If you're not recognizing your wins, then who is? And there's enough problems in life. So this comes back to self-leadership. One of the things that I try to do every day is at the end of my day, I write down what were 3 wins for the day. And at the end of the week on Friday, I'll look at them and I should have 10 to 15 things on there. Because if I'm not doing that, who's doing that for James Robbins? Nobody is. My life is filled with how do we fix this? How do we change this? How do we fix this problem? How do we help this person that's having this problem? And if we don't stop and stack wins, then we're losing this massive amount of energy that can propel you forward. And it's there for everybody.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Are you ready to rise higher? You might know that's what I'm all about on this show. It's like nothing wrong with where you're at, but what if you could rise a little higher? That's what we're going to talk about today with an author and speaker and leadership. I'm not going to say guru, but mentor. Let's talk to James Robbins today. James is an international keynote leadership speaker, a transformational guide, and the author of the upcoming book, The Call to Climb, a story to find your path, conquer your fears, and fulfill your destiny. I'm so on board with everything right there. James is known for helping high performers and leaders reconnect with purpose, and he blends heart, adventure, and insight into a guide that can help people back to their inner compass. He has decades of experience in leadership development and personal growth and blends actionable insights, soulful storytelling, and grounded wisdom to inspire people to live intentionally, lead consciously, and rise with purpose. The new book comes out August 5th, very soon, and I am very excited to learn all about it and your journey. James, welcome to the show.
Amy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I was really excited to preview the first 3 chapters of your book, and one of the things that really resonated with me is that you said your life's next level is calling. And I love that because there's nothing wrong with where you are right now. And sometimes I think we can get a little bit like down on ourselves. And how do you balance looking forward to that next level with really loving where you are and presence right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so much of life is balancing out that ambition for wanting to do more, but then also, how do you do that without judging yourself and feeling bad about where you are right now? Because obviously that's not good. But, as you started to see in the book there, when we are living life and yet there's that feeling inside of us that won't go away. And I'm not talking like you go to the movie, you get inspired, and you think, I should do more. But I'm talking like day after day, week after week, there's something in you that just says, I think I'm meant for more. Like, I think my life should be bigger than this, whatever bigger is. But it's that desire that we have to begin listening to and think, okay, what is this trying to say to me?
Absolutely. And one of your core messages in there was talking about how this journey reshaped how you saw leadership. And I don't know if you want to discuss that now or if you want to discuss it, throughout our conversation, but that fascinates me too, how it reshapes what you thought you knew, right?
For sure. No, I can talk about that because that particular moment was a climb that we were doing in South America. It was actually Mount Sajama in Bolivia. And at that point, I had been teaching leadership, of course, and so much of this was, I'd fallen into this place of like, hey, I can't make this happen for you. Like, you've got to want this. If you really want to be successful, you've got to want it. And if you don't want it, well, what can I do, right? So, but we get on this mountain and we're halfway up and the one guy wants to quit. And then eventually I want to quit, but I don't want to admit that I want to quit. So I'm kind of hoping this other guy quits. And so I can just get down. But the guy leading us, he just kept doing all these things like, okay, well, let's just go here. And then we'd get there. Okay, well, let's go here. And basically, in the end, he gets us to the summit. It's the highest peak in this country. And why that impacted me so much is I thought, had he just been, at 20,000 feet, like, hey, guys, if you don't want this, if you're tired, like, I can't make this happen for you. But he didn't. because he saw strength in us that we didn't see at the time. And so this becomes a larger conversation about the people we surround ourselves with, right? Having the right people in our life. There's always someone who's going to say, "Hey, it's okay. Like, hey, that's fine. If you don't want this, don't do it." But we also need those people in our life that know how strong we are. They can see that strength and they don't let us fall short of our own potential. And I think that's the best leaders are that type of people. They serve us by, even having the uncomfortable talks to push us a bit.
Yeah, and he kinda made it more accessible and like, "Okay, we're just going to hear," because sometimes it's too much to digest. You're like, "This is too big." It's a mountain, right? And it just seems too big, and, like, maybe that's a key to the leadership too, and our lives is, like, taking I know for me it is, like, day by day works a lot better than thinking, 10 years or whatever.
For sure, right? It's like that old adage, if you find yourself stuck, then your first step isn't small enough. It's always
Oh, I've never heard that.
yeah.
I love that.
I don't know who said it, but when I heard it, I thought, yeah, that's so true.
Wow. All right. Well, let's get into how long did it take you to write this book? I'm curious.
Well, the actual writing of the book was, I don't know, 6 months, but this book was really 12 years in the making because
Wow.
it started long before I ever climbed some of these higher mountains.
They do that. Books take a while and they percolate and everything. And I'm sure it affected you lived it before you actually, were able to put it into words probably.
Yeah, for sure. Because what happened, I don't know, my mid 30s or something, and I was having those moments where I was asking myself the question,
Yeah.
is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? And I was working in a not for profit. It was highly purpose driven. And a lot of people would think, hey, you're just doing this amazing job. And I thought, well, if it's so amazing, why am I not happy? And what am I struggling with? And it was during that time I stumbled upon a book by Dr. James Hollis, and it's called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. And Dr. Hollis, if you've ever read any of his work, it's just so deep, it's so amazing. But he is the one that planted the seed that ended up being this book because he talks about how all of us will receive a summons from the soul. In other words, we have our first life, right? And that's the life that we've lived, that we have all this programming from our parents, from our teachers about how we should live our life. We do all the right things, whether that's go to college or get the job. And that's that self that's been constructed. But then eventually, all of a sudden, the soul begins to speak up and wants to take us on a different path. And then there's this collision, as he calls it, a collision of selves. And that was what was happening for me. And like I said, it was that planted the seed for the book because the book is all about someone who's out of alignment, asking that question, is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? And then they wander into this remote village in the Bolivian Andes only to find out that they've been expecting them and that they have been called to this place to have a conversation with their soul up this mountain. So that's how the book came to be.
It's fascinating that you were in the nonprofit world even, and just that blows my mind a little bit, because that's the purpose life or what we think is the purpose life, right? Like, "Oh, you did it." Like, we admire those people. I live with someone who does that, and so I mean, what did that transition to? Do you still do that?
No, so that was my first career, and I was working actually as a preacher. I was just this young preacher, which
Wow.
was something I had not thought I would ever do.
Yeah.
And yet, life throws funny curves at us. So I was doing that. And the challenge in that role, I mean, obviously, the reason I went into it is because I loved helping people, and that was just a great way to do that. But when I started to have these moments of like, well, but I feel like I'm on the wrong path, which is such a weird thing to say in that vocation. And then also when you think of, well, maybe I should do something else, there's all this pressure of, well, you can't do that. Like you can't quit on God. Like that's literally how heavy that can be. And yet it's the same thing for anyone who's working a job that they don't like and they're thinking of leaving. there's all these things we wrestle through, like, oh, what will my parents think? Or will I get another job? Like, bottom line, at the end of the day, it's always a fear of something, fear of being judged, fear that we're not going to, have enough, and we're not going to survive. And it's that lack of betting on ourselves that actually gets in the way of us really, really living the life that we want to live.
Do you feel like you had an inner voice telling you that before and you just didn't acknowledge it or listen to it? Or do you think you had to have those experiences in order to get where you were going?
I think that I had those tugs, those whispers, but then I didn't listen to it because to listen to that would take me down a very scary road, right?
Yeah, the
Which is
fear.
all about change. And
Mhm.
in fact, so Dr. Hollis talks about this in his book that if we ignore the appointment, the soul speaks up louder, usually through anxiety, depression, some sort of crisis, even some kind of a breakdown. I mean, how many people change their life after some sort of, breakdown physically, mentally, right? Yeah, so it
Yeah,
happens
I
all
think
the
I've
time.
had like 5, I don't know. Yeah.
But when you in hindsight, the breakdown happened because something was out of alignment and we didn't listen.
Yeah.
And that was totally the case with me. And so, I just buried that and just kept moving on. And so whether it's a career that someone's thinking of leaving or even a relationship, right? I mean, how many people are in relationships where they're asking the question like, should I stay in this or should I not? And those aren't easy decisions, but where is the wisdom? The wisdom is within us if we can just quiet enough and then be courageous enough to actually listen.
Yeah. I mean, it does take a lot of courage. And and I think it takes discernment too. And that's where that quiet piece comes in. What practices do you have to really foster that and listen closer?
I think for me, that's one of those skills that I would say I'm still working on. I still have those moments where I'm like, is this just anxiety speaking to me right
Yeah.
now? Or is
Is
this,
this what I ate or yeah.
yeah, that I need to do something different. No, when I think back to one of the most difficult decisions I made in my life, and it had to do with the marriage I was in and whether I was going to leave that relationship. And I remember on the outside, like saying everything that everyone wanted me to say. No, of course, like, keep working on this and keep moving forward. But it was actually my now ex at the time said, I think you need to get honest with yourself about what you really want. And I remember taking a trip. I had to go visit one of my kids up in Canada, and I took the day by myself out in nature, out in the mountains. And I think this is partly a key, right? And as I was walking, I remember saying to myself, okay, I want you to be really honest without any kind of judgment of yourself. What do you really want to do? And no sooner had I asked the question as I had to answer. But it's like I had to get away from all of, in a sense, my environment and back to a place for me, with being nature, and then give myself the permission to be honest without judgment. And I think when you can remove that judgment, even that you're going to bring on yourself, you're going to be able to listen more clearly.
It's tough because families and you had kids at that point too, right? I mean, it's you just removing judgment is a taller order than it sounds like when we just talk about it, and
Yeah,
I
100%.
I I've left 2 marriages, and so I completely understand with a kid in each, and it was the first one in particular, I just knew the expectations of my parents and all that, and so there was just so much self-judgment, but I did it anyway. I knew once I sat down with myself that I wasn't on the right path, and I had to, or, what was I doing to my daughter really? So, I can relate, but it's tough. It's tough. So how do you help people, and where does your book come in there when they're dealing with something as transformative and heavy as that?
For sure. So, we talk about in the book, I talk about, of course, it's important to start being more, I guess, in tune, right? In tune with the different drives and desires in your life. And I'm not talking, the weekend, I was really happy this weekend, or I was really down this weekend. But what's that persistent thread that's running through week after week after week? And sometimes I've said to myself in the past, if I still feel like this in 40 days, then I'm going to deal with it. But until then, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is legit or not. I've done things like that. But once we realize that there's something else, there's something knocking on the door that we have to give attention to, then part of it is understanding that everything that shapes our life is so much of that, you know, programming that happens in our early life and even just stored in our subconscious. The more you can begin to understand your own programming, the more you can understand the biases that you have when you make decisions about your life. At the end of the day, the question really is, well, what do you want? I mean, you only have this one life, right? Whether you think we come back or not, in this life, this is all you have, right? You have this one life. So what is it that you want? And some people can't even answer that question because they think, well, what am I allowed to want?
Yeah.
Right? Is that we're waiting for permission to live our life, and permission is never granted to live your life. It's only seized, right? It's sort of an overthrow of the ego by the soul.
I
That's
love
the
that.
only way that happens. So the more we're tapped into what is it that I really want in my life? What are the things about me that I know are going to want me to go back to my old routine? And then having the courage to show up and push through those moments of anxiety and be authentic. Really, that's what it is. I believe our purpose in life isn't found in some not for profit or in some other country, but I believe our purpose is really to bring the most authentic and honest version of you to this planet. And that's your gift to the world.
That's beautifully said. And when you and when you dump religious programming on top of that, however we're raised, which if you were a preacher, I'm assuming that you had some religious programming growing up, that can take time to break. It's not like it is those small steps. It's not going to happen overnight, right? And it's just getting in the habit. I think I would say probably developing habits of recognizing when they crop up. Would you agree with that?
For sure. And for anyone listening that you've experienced religious programming, it can be really heavy because it's not just your parents, and it doesn't matter what the religion is, but whatever the religion is, it's backed by some deity that, people believe in. And so what can be heavier than that? And so with programming often comes guilt because you're not measuring up to something. And whether that's guilt about making money, guilt about it can be all kinds of crazy things. So yeah, religious programming can really hold people back and stop them from being authentic.
What'd you have to break
What did I have to break?
in the religious aspect of it?
Yeah, how much time do we have for this episode? Because I could go through a lot
Same.
of things. I'll go through one obvious one, and it has to do with money. So I remember when I was young in the ministry. So this is a crazy dynamic that can happen in religious communities, right? Is that you join the community, and if it's really healthy, everyone really cares about each other. And you have this moment of like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I have this tribe that really accepts me. And they do, as long as you play by the rules, which, is there's a lot, every community in a sense is like that. But if it's a religious community, then there's usually a lot of rules. Well, one of them has to do though with money. And I remember early in my ministry career where people were, if I was going to go and rent a house, someone else would want to see that to make sure it wasn't too nice of a house, because you couldn't live in a nice house and you certainly couldn't drive a nice car. And if you did, people wouldn't be happy with that. And I even remember one day I had this like junker car, had no air conditioning, and there was this young couple, and it was at church on a Sunday, and I had something for them in the trunk. So we walked out, and I walked over to the car, and the young lady said, "This is your car?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, I'm so excited that my preacher doesn't drive some fancy Jaguar, but drives this." Like, she was really happy and praising me that I was driving this. So when you deviate away from that and think, well, no, I want to make money, then whether someone is saying it or not, you're thinking that people are judging it. And so you begin to think like, well, I can't make money, or I can't make a lot of money because if I make a lot of money, then that's bad, or then I'm a bad person. So a lot of people with religious programming can probably relate with what I'm saying. And that makes it difficult for sure. But that was
Yeah.
one thing I had to push through a lot.
I bet, and then, and especially if you stay in that, there's a fine line because then we all know the televangelists that have private jets, and all the rest of it, and then you're like, "Well, shit, are you blessed by God or is this too much?" And honestly, I think the call there is to let go of our own judgments, right? I don't know your path and I don't know what maybe I'm just supposed to learn from this, right? Like, I think that, when we get down to the fundamentals, which I think is something that you talk about a lot, it's about our own inner journey, not all this other stuff and all these other judgments that we're making. So you can turn it inward, right?
For sure. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of anyone who runs a non-for-profit and then flaunts, what private jets or whatever.
Right.
But again, I'm not their judge. I'm not their boss. So they're gonna have to do their own thing. But at the end of the day, it's not so much about what everyone else is doing. It's, do you feel free enough to bring the most authentic version of you to the world? And the reality is, most people would say no to that
Yeah.
because we've got to fight through these barriers that we have, that we don't want to be judged by the tribe.
So where do we start? Where do you tell people to start?
I tell people to start that first you've got to get honest about what is it that you want? What
Yeah.
do you want?
Yeah.
And again, like I said before, that's a difficult question for people because
Mhm.
they think, I'm not sure, or I haven't even thought about it, or I just want to get to the weekend, or I'd like one more week's holiday. And they've just so anesthetized themselves that they don't think bigger on a scale of what they're capable of. And what do you want doesn't mean that you're going to go start your own business or that you're going to, do something massive, but it could just mean I want to live more authentically. And when my friend asked me to watch their puppy for the weekend and I can't, I want to say no and not feel anxious about that. Right. I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. I don't want to leave a conversation with my friends and then think, oh, should I have said this? Should I have said that? Right. Like, all of this is just us trying to be safe within the tribe. So, yeah, number one, you've got to figure out what is it that you want. Number two, you got to start to pursue it. And so this is where the climb comes in, right? Like, yeah, get out of your tent, get on the mountain and start climbing. And as soon as you do that, that's where the fun begins, because that's where you're going to run into a headwind. That's where you're going to run into anxiety. You're going to run into that inner resistance. And now we have a chance to begin to deal with those things, because those are those silent, invisible things that actually run your life. And when you're not aware of them, then they truly are sort of like the shadow government that controls everything. So you got to take back control of your life.
Big time. And I love some of those examples that you mentioned because I think we can get wrapped up in like, oh, my call is to, get on stage and speak or whatever. But really, it can be those freedom limiting things that we do. Like people pleasing is lying, right? And so, how can we get into a more honest version? Like you were saying, authenticity. Like it can be so small seeming, but it's really pretty big in the bigger picture because you expand your comfort zone a little bit more, or you get a little further up the mountain, probably. I guess.
Yeah,
Could you say that?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But no growth happens like at base camp, right? No growth happens just in the safety of the tent. And so that's why, hey, climb something. And it's in that process. I mean, we're born to walk uphill, right? We're born to strive. And if we're not striving, many people can relate to struggling, right? Like struggling, just like I got to pay the rent, I got to pay the bills, whatever. But no, what are we striving for? Because that's what brings out the best in us for sure.
I hate the word struggle. I'm not much of a fan of it. Are you? Like, I don't know, I just feel like it pulls me down a little bit. Are you into the words that you use? Are you really particular? I'm pretty particular about those. Are you?
I'm particular. I don't know if I'm as particular as you, but I I try to keep certain words out of out of my lexicon for
Like
sure.
what?
Well, I think any sort of self-criticism, I've done pretty good at just banishing that. Just setting a
Same.
rule like we don't talk like that here.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think it's really powerful, and that's part of my journey too. Um, so I, I believe that you talk about self leadership. Can you speak to that concept and how important that is?
Yeah, for sure. So when you think about self-leadership, well, let's think of leadership for a moment. You show up, whatever you're leading, a group, a team, you're running a company, you've got to show up and, in a sense, mobilize all these people to accomplish something. Well, self-leadership is like that, but there's no one to mobilize but you. Like at the end of the day, you're responsible for your life. And
Yeah.
one of the one of the parts of the book, the main character gets to this point where they realize like help is not coming. And I used to say that to my kids and they would get angry at me. One of them still gets angry. They're still triggered by this phrase, but I would say, "Hey, help is not coming." And they didn't like that because it meant like, then this is all on me. And that can be overwhelming to someone depending on what strengths they're drawing from, right? But help is not coming. And so self leadership really begins with, hey, no one's getting me out of bed at 4:30 or 5 to go work out. So I've got to do that. Now, as you lead yourself, right? Leadership self-leadership is really about I am going to do what I want to do, like what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to be consistent. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that you're going to climb alone always because I need friends. I still have those days where I'm thinking, man, I need the encouragement of my closest friends. Right? Today's a heavy day. Or if we're going to stick with the mountain metaphor, it's a blizzard out there and I need that strength that comes with the tribe.
Mhm.
So there are those days, but those days don't replace self leadership because that's what carries you when your friends aren't around.
Yeah, I was gonna you kinda read my mind as you were talking because I was thinking, what do you do on those days when you hit a bit of a lower point, you know? And, um, having a network that you can reach out to, maybe that does call you higher or doesn't judge, seems pretty crucial. Would you uh, even though you're saying help is not coming, right? The community is still very important, would you say?
100%. So help is not coming until it is. But if you go through life thinking like I just need someone to bail me out all the time,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No.
obviously that's not a good habit to get into. But
Mm-mm.
if I and anyone listening right now, regardless of what the situation is that you're in, like regardless of whether it's your fault that you're there or it's not your fault, regardless of what got you to where you are, the challenges you're facing, the solution is inside you. Now, it might mean pulling in some people that are going to help out, but at the end of the day, it's like you become that CEO of that situation. And so I've got to take action. And I think for all of us, this is true for me as well. There are those days where there's just a lot of things that are not going well. And I just want to bail. Like, I'll just let me go and do something else. Let me distract myself. Let me drive to the mountains. I just don't want to deal with this. But the problem's not going anywhere. And so okay, maybe I got to go and collect my thoughts, collect some of my strength, but I still got to come back and go, okay, what's step one? Right? It's shrinking that first step. And all right, this is what I'm going to do. For a lot of business owners, you can go through those moments where maybe business is slow, cash flow is tight. You're like, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to pay my employees? I've been through all those moments, but me ruminating about it does nothing. And so, okay, well, let's just do something and let me get started. And then you do, and then you feel better.
Yeah, you really do. So much of that has come with age and experience for me too. It's like, I know if I just do something and sit down with it for 3 minutes or, whatever it is, like, and just take some action, I'm gonna sleep better at night. I'm gonna feel better and know I accomplished something. And then it also builds that confidence, right? You start to build like, "Oh, okay, I climbed that mountain. I can do this," right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk about, this kind of on the subject, discipline versus desire. That might have happened with you as your guide was guiding you guys up the mountain. Um, what really fuels our momentum?
I love that question about discipline and desire, especially for people who are creatives. Creatives, we live off desire at times and inspiration, and we feel like doing something, so we do it. But the magic is really in the discipline, showing up and doing things consistently.
In it though, do you like the book, The War of Art,
I
the
have not read that.
by Stephen Pressfield? Oh my gosh, it's all about that. It's about creatives, but it's my favorite, my go-to. Easy read, and I've read it a million times, and it's about that. It's about I don't wait for inspiration to strike. I sit down on time and then start writing and allow inspiration to come, and it's powerful.
I definitely look at some of the people out there that seem like it's a strength of theirs to be disciplined. And I look at that and I think that's not me, like naturally. Like I really fight to be disciplined because in so many ways I feel like it's like hemming me in. And then like being strapped into a roller coaster and I don't want to be on the roller coaster, but I can't leave. So I don't want to be disciplined. But yet all the moments of my life where I've not been disciplined have just have led me off to be lost in a forest somewhere, and, and I got to come back and get on the path. All right, stay on the path, James. Just stay on this path. That's all you've got to do, right? And it could be in business, like James, just
Yeah.
pick up the phone and make 10 calls today, and write one blog post, and do this. And the plan seems really easy until you execute consistently.
Yes.
And if you think about it, let's take Mount Everest, right? Highest mountain in the world.
Mhm.
Mount Everest probably takes about 60,000 steps to get to the summit. The problem with those steps is they're all so small that we don't value them, but yet it's the sum total of all 60,000 that gets you there. So that's where discipline comes in, is that I'm going to take the next step even if I don't feel like it.
Oh. Oh, so true. I mean, like, I'll think I'm gonna be so that's like you just put into words so much when we're like, "Monday morning, that's the day I'm gonna start my workout routine," or whatever it is, and then it rolls around and you're like, "But it feels so good to sit outside and have my coffee," or whatever. I might have been drawing from my own life right there. So I can absolutely relate. And what does discipline look like for you now? Like, do you just have this knowledge that you can align with where you're like, "I know that I'm leading myself and that I'll show up and I'm gonna show up and do the work," or, like, what does it look like for you in actual day to day?
Yeah, discipline for me now is more about I'm just better able to recognize when I've veered off the path. Whereas when I was younger, I would just veer off the path. But now it's like, at least I know I'm veering off the path. I
Hey, that's
can,
progress. Yeah.
I can have those conversations with myself because the other thing here, Amy, and you know this idea that our lives really run in these repetitive loops. And in fact, this is one of the things that prompted the book. It came from me keeping a journal for maybe 12 years. But in the last few years of those 12 years, I began reading past journal entries because the journaling app would say, "Hey, you have like 7 entries on this day in history," and so I would start reading them. And what would happen is I would read whatever was happening a year ago, 2 years ago, and I was like, "Wow, this is a bit eerie." Like, it's like I was feeling the same on the same day, a year ago or 2 years ago, and the more I began to read back, it was actually, I would say, even terrifying because I was like, there was way too many coincidences about my emotional life, about the things I was struggling with, the things I was struggling with 3 years ago, I'm still struggling with now. And it was like, it was like somebody opened up a window for me to peer in and I could see this pattern.
Mhm.
And I just really wasn't changing. As much as all the work I put into self-development and personal growth, my life was just in this big, big loop. And the scary thing about that is that when you can see the pattern going back, it also means you can predict your future. As much as your optimism says, no, no, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to manifest this goal or I'm going to have this, like the same goal that you had 4 years ago, but you still didn't complete? Well, you're probably not gonna complete in 4 years from now either, because it's just you can predict the future. And as I began to see that, that's where I was like, "Oh, if I don't do something to break this pattern," or to think of it like an orbit, if I don't if I don't add some thrust to get out of this orbit, this is my life. And this is where discipline comes in, right? To begin to do the small things that put you on a different trajectory, even when you don't want to do them.
Ooh, yeah. Exactly, and I can 100% relate to what you just said about journaling. I looked back on my journals once when I went through a long stretch of journaling, and I was like, "I am sick of my own shit." I was like, "I am complaining about the same things or going through the same beating myself up," or whatever it was, and I was like, "I don't wanna do this anymore." And that is a great case for journaling because if you, like, find yourself, "What can't I get out of this?" Well, read your journals, and then you can go like, "Oh, okay, what do I need to do to get out of this?" That's really good, and I know somebody that now writes journals of what they want life to look like, and I'm like, maybe there's some value in that." Have you ever tried that? I haven't really, but, she was on the show the other day, and I was like, maybe that's a cool trick to start breaking some things up when you need to. And what did you do to break out of that thrust? Like, w what was it for you that helped you take even baby steps to get out of those patterns that you were living?
So the first part was just being able to see the patterns. And
Yeah.
like
They say a pattern is hardest to see when you're living it, right?
for sure. And
Mm.
I remember one New Year's Eve, like I would always, do a year in review and I would write down my goals and what I accomplished and what I didn't and what I was excited about for the next year. And so I went to write that in my journal. And then I noticed that the day before, I had basically written that. And I was like, I don't remember writing this yesterday, but obviously this was like written yesterday. And then I looked and I'm like, no, that was a year ago yesterday. But I literally could just copy and paste. And that's where I started to see like I am living a copy and paste life.
Oof.
So when you think about, well, back to your question, how did I break out of that? I think that's just an ongoing process. But the things that I do or have been doing, number one, to start to see those patterns. Number two, start to see what are the fears that are actually holding you in that orbit, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's a fear of something: fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of not having anything valuable to offer to the world, right? Fear that being rejected by our tribe. It just comes down to a few core things, and yet they're so powerful. I mean, they're so powerful. Think about Freud when he talked about repetition compulsion and how we will, in a sense, just keep living out traumas, or we will even track the same sort of, almost think of it as a play. We'll attract the same characters into the play that we already lived, 10 years ago, and we don't even realize we've done it. So we've brought in the same relationship, the same drama, the same thing. But for the brain, it's like, okay, now I can relax because I know this show. I know how this ends. So I don't have to be stressed about it.
Yeah.
That's what the brain does. But the soul is different. The soul seeks expansion, seeks really to be its highest self. And so that's where we have a problem. So getting clear in your patterns, starting to recognize where are these fears. And then to me, this is the hard work, is where you begin to endure the anxiety to live more authentic, to live more aligned with your values. And then you get on the other side of that and you realize, oh, I didn't die. And the next time you'll still feel anxiety, but you're going to feel less. And it's just a constant repeat of that until you elevate out of that into a new place.
Endure the anxiety. That's a good message right there, right? Because we really do. I I was kinda wondering when you were talking, because I know you have kids. You have 1 kid, 2, what do you have?
Three. Yeah.
You have 3 kids. And I wondered, I'm sure you've done a lot of work to raise them to not feel these things, but I don't know that there's any way around it. I don't I am curious if you think that it's a human nature type of thing, and we're gonna do this and then learn how not to, or learn how to break out of it or not.
Yeah, I think obviously everybody has their formative programming. And it's almost like a deck of cards that you're given as,
Sure.
when you're born. You got this deck of cards.
The hand you're dealt. Right.
Exactly. And some people have a stronger hand and it's so much easier for them to win. And others, okay, they have a different deck. But even in that, even in the programming and the fears that we have, this is the strange part about it. There's also a superpower that gets developed. So, for example, for those of you who I'm not going to say are people pleasers because it's just an identity thing that you're not, but that you have the habit of people pleasing,
Love that.
right? So you don't want to have the habit of people pleasing. Granted, for sure, right? You do want to live more authentic, but your habit of people pleasing has created this superpower where you can walk into a room and you are so in tune with how everyone is doing. You can think this person doesn't seem happy and this person seems like something's off with them because you've honed that superpower as a coping mechanism. Well, pull it out of let it stop being a coping mechanism and now it's just a superpower. And whether you're a leader or you're in sales and now you're walking into a room and you can read the room where someone else who was given a stronger deck, we'll say stronger deck, where they don't people please, they don't have that skill that you do.
I'm all for flipping things around and finding these like shifts. That's so good. I love that, James. Yeah. Thank you. That's so inspiring, right? Like, how can we understand this in a whole new way and let it serve us and serve our purpose and serve our potential and all those things?
It's part of
Fabulous.
us, right? Like
I love
everything
that.
is part of us. So whether we want to judge it good or bad, it's just part of us. But now it's like as I go forward, how am I going to use this? So
Yeah.
like imposter syndrome would be like that. When I think of, I grew up on a small cattle ranch. I was this redheaded, sort of homely kid, couldn't find a date. So by the time I came out of high school, I wasn't like the most confident person. Then when I got into the world where I had to speak on stage, and to me, that's like a near death experience every time. Well, because of this imposter syndrome, and I didn't want to look stupid, that made me work so hard and prepare so much. And now, 3,000 presentations later, Inc. magazine says, hey, he's one of the top leadership speakers. Well, you know, one of the reasons I became so good is because I had an imposter syndrome that drove me. So I'm not saying that's the best way, but even the things that we now look at as what we might call a weakness, they still serve us in ways that can be good. So you take the good from it, but then continue to evolve.
Mhm. What a powerful shift and reframe. I'm queen of the reframe. I love it. Like, how can we start to understand things differently? So that's incredibly powerful. Like, what an awesome thing. Um, how did you reframe any setbacks when you were on the climb, or even if you're experiencing some setbacks on your own life journey that is akin to the climb?
On that one climb that I talk about in some of my speeches, I didn't reframe anything. I was literally the biggest baby on the side of that mountain and thinking, yeah, I just want my friend to quit so we can get down. But at the same time, we got to the summit, and I remember thinking, that's when it hit me. I felt guilty, and I was like, "What happened to me?" I'm like, I'm this. I teach motivation, right? Then here I am, being the worst teammate ever. And the guy at the top had said to us, he said, "Congratulations, guys, you did it." And I remember struggling to think, well, like, did I? Like, that was an ugly climb, but the truth was I did. I did get to the top, maybe not the way I would have wanted, but I got there. But really, I got there because I had other people climbing with me, right? So that's that power of working together.
Was he waiting for you to quit? Your friend?
No, he had already said he wanted to quit. Like he's like,
Okay.
I want to quit. And I didn't want to be the guy that looked bad. So the guide would say, "Okay, well, how are you doing, James?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I mean, we can go up or we can go down. It doesn't matter to me." Like just lying through my teeth, right? But I was just hoping we would go down. But
You were just waiting for somebody to say, then we'll go down. You've been like, all right, they made the call. So
exactly,
I'm
yeah,
just along for the ride.
that's that learned helplessness, right? Like, just tell me where to go, but I'm hoping you tell me go down.
Oh, okay. Talk to me about learned helplessness a little bit.
That's just a habit that we get into where we have eroded our belief that something's possible, and we've eroded our agency, right? Our ability to believe that our actions will make any difference. So when we get to that place, and I've been there many times, sometimes it's just for an hour, but it could be in business where you're trying to launch a new offer or we're trying to sell something and nothing seems to work. And then you just like, well, nothing seems to work, right? So I'm just going to give up. I can't do anything. And this is really more about a resilience in in yourself, but even deeper, it's a belief in you.
Hmm.
Learned helplessness is where we get to a point where I, I can't I can't do anything in this moment to make a difference. Now, of course, there are some times where people are legitimately helpless, like they can't do anything in a certain environment, but that's the outlier. So for most of us, we get to those days or those hours or moments where we think, why try? And it's like failure and setback can be sedimentary in our life, right? Just like layer, layer, layer,
Mm.
layer. And suddenly we have this library, a stack of evidence of things not working out. And when we get there, it's like, well, I just don't want to dream anymore. And I'm not even going to set goals anymore because, why try? And, the truth is, yeah, okay, the failures add up in life because as you get older, you should be failing. Like you should always have failures that are adding to the pile, but there should also be wins adding to the pile. And I think that's the bigger challenge is people don't tap into all the things that are going good. And I give you an example of this. So in our leadership company, we'll take people through these coaching cohorts. We'll be working with a group of people, a bunch of managers, and they'll show up to these coaching calls. So I'll be with them like every week for 10 weeks. And every week I'll show up and I'll say, hey, what were your wins in the last week? Tell me what was good. And the first week, no one has anything. And the second week, no one has anything. And I have to keep telling them, like, if you're not recognizing your wins, then who is? And there's enough problems in life. So this comes back to self-leadership. One of the things that I try to do every day is at the end of my day, I write down what were 3 wins for the day. And at the end of the week on Friday, I'll look at them and I should have 10 to 15 things on there. Because if I'm not doing that, who's doing that for James Robbins? Nobody is.
Mm-mm.
My life is filled with how do we fix this? How do we change this? How do we fix this problem? How do we help this person that's having this problem? And if we don't stop and stack wins, then we're losing this massive amount of energy that can propel you forward. And it's there for everybody.
Yeah. And just adjacent to that though, I feel like it's so much easier for me to find other people's wins than my own, you know? It's
100%.
like I'm trained, I don't know if that's just habit or whatever, but I'm trained to be able to see it in other people, but not as much as myself, and we can train ourselves, I think, to do those wins. I've done that, right? And tried to make a list, and I'm like, I can't think of anything, of myself. And yet, if I was making a list for my daughter, I could probably, keep going,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, how many episodes have you done with your podcast so far?
This podcast, I think you're 233.
The average podcast doesn't make it past 7 episodes.
Is that right? I've heard different stats, but, well, great.
So
I'm way
think
above
about
average.
so think about that, like, the fact that you're at this episode, I mean, that's amazing, but we wouldn't necessarily recognize that in ourselves because we're just doing it, right? We're in it, but to your point, yeah, it's easier for us to see it in someone else.
No, I've wanted to quit. It's been a mountain climb, like this particular show, and I still have days, but I don't wanna put that energy into it anymore. It was like I think I hit a point where I was like, how long am it was like the journaling, like, how long are you gonna live this pattern? What are you really gonna put into it? What do you really want? What if you never made a dime? Would you still do it? What is for me, it was so much about purpose, and I'm like, mine is using my voice to amplify others and use the skills that I've got in communication to really help others rise higher, right? And so it does come back to purpose so much for me with this. Like, and it is that mountain that I'm climbing, and it's not always easy.
Podcast is a lot of work. It's a lot more work than people think, and I've started and stopped at least 3 podcasts.
Same. Yeah, I get it. Yes, it is. It is. And when people say they want to start a podcast, which I've heard a zillion people ask me about it, I'm like, okay, here's what it takes. And then they're like, wait. And you know what? I had somebody recently that wanted it all done for her. And I was like, it doesn't sound like you really want to do the work. Are you sure you want this? And I think that falls a lot into what you're talking about. Like, do you want to, what if there's no one else around because no one's coming to help you, or right? Wasn't that the phrase? Help is not coming. Help is
Help
not
is
on the
not
way.
coming. Help is not coming.
Yeah.
And this comes back to where we started this conversation about tapping into that, I use the word soul, but you could say psyche, intuition in our life, that part of you that knows you better than you, because that has to have alignment in whatever it is that we do.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people say, hey, I want to do something like, oh, I want to sing on stage. But really, what they want is they want thousands of people adoring them. And they don't really want to put in the work of actually being a singer. And I think part of that comes with getting older is so you can look at what is it that I really want and why do I want that? Like if I'm really honest. And one thing I did that I felt was helpful years ago is I took 30 days and every day I would get up and I would set a timer and for 5 minutes I would just free write. What do I want? And just because
Mm.
some days I'm like, well, I really want this. And then 3 days later, I don't want that anymore. I want something else. But just 30 days. And you do that. And now with AI, this will be even easier. Once you're done 30 days, upload all that to AI and go, what am I saying? What is it that I'm really wanting? And AI will pick up the pattern. And for me, when I was doing that, the pattern was I want to start a podcast and empower people to make shifts and changes in their life. And I wasn't doing that before. I was doing all this leadership corporate stuff. So it's just a good way that you can get some insight.
Oof. I love that because I lately, even just personally, I remember listening to Matthew McConaughey's I read it, Green Lights. Did you read that book?
I didn't.
It's great. But he talks about all the things he was doing in his life, and he's like, "I was getting C's in 7 different things. I wanna get A's in 3 things." And so he just honed down all the things that he was doing and really focused on, like, his family and his nonprofit and acting, like, right? And that's when he, I think, won an Oscar and really, like, really dedicated himself, and I think sometimes we get spread a little thin, and I love that. I wanna do what you just said because I feel like I've been spread a little wide, and I need to just get more focused. Do you feel like people try to do too much a lot of times and it takes away from their purpose?
100%, especially creatives. And if there is one biggest mistake that I would attach to myself, it was trying to do too many things, even
Mm,
early on,
interesting.
because I would look at it like I would see something and oh, I could do that. Or let's say in my business first started out just me speaking on stages, right? So I would I was talking about leadership, and then I would see somebody talking about marketing, and I think, well, I market, like I could do that, and I think I should start this, and so the ideas will come,
Mhm.
and within an hour I can build a new website and have like an offer up, and then all of a sudden I just wasted a day, 2 days down a road that I shouldn't be going. Like, could I go down that road? I could. Like, here's the thing, there's so many roads you can go down, but it doesn't mean that you should go down. And this ties back to the soul, right? When you start to realize, hey, my purpose is for me to show up in my most authentic way. Now, what do I do though? Like, what's my job? Which I call your worthy pursuit. Well, that could be 100 different things. And neither is right nor wrong. Like, I'm not a believer that there's just this one thing, because that one thing can suddenly be taken from you and then you're left with like, oh, my reason for living is gone. No, your reason for living is always to bring yourself to this world. Now, maybe you're going to be a speaker, maybe you're going to be a CEO somewhere, maybe you are going to be a hairdresser and not run your own business, but the way you interact with clients makes their day. Whatever it might be, there's all these worthy pursuits. And we get caught into this mindset of you've got to have this career and then stay with it. Even if you change companies, you're going to be you're an engineer, so stay as an engineer.
Mhm.
So when an engineer says, "I'm tired of doing this. I'm gonna start spiritual retreats in Mexico," everyone's like, "What? You can't like you just
Yeah.
wasted all those years and wasted all that money." I was in Colombia one time, and there was this and someone invited me to a salsa class, and I thought, "Okay, I'll go." And so I go to this salsa class, and then the guy teaching it was this Canadian guy, and I am like, "Dude, how did you get down here? Like, and you're teaching salsa?" And he's like, "Oh, I was an engineer in Canada and hated it. I came down here, loved dancing, quit my job, and now I teach dancing." And I just thought, "Good for you, man. Good for you."
Mhm. Mhm. And, I personally subscribe to the belief that it's never time wasted. It feeds our unique journey in some way that we can't even predict. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of your life, if someone were to tell your story, how long do you want them to talk for? They could sum that up in a moment
He
or
was an engineer. The
yeah,
end.
yeah, or we're gonna talk to him for a while. But at the end of the day, our life is again, it's about what we bring to people. Because if you think about it, at your funeral, someone's gonna read your eulogy, which is all the things you accomplished, and that's gonna be about a minute long. And then for the rest of the hour, people are going to get up and talk about you and how you impacted their life. And that's how the curtain closes. So if that's how the curtain closes, then shouldn't that give us some idea of what's most important?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes, it's how you made them feel. That's what people remember.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. Speaking of feelings, I want to ask you how perhaps your view of love has shifted and unconditional love in particular toward yourself, toward others. Because when I talk about letting go of judgments, to me, that's a real call to unconditional love, which is very challenging in some cases, especially to ourselves. And I'm curious about your view on that and maybe how it's grown over the years.
I think when you can get rid of judgment in your life, it's probably the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Because here's the thing, right? We all have we have these desires, we have these we think, okay, I want to do this in my life and I've got to be this kind of a person, or for me, I gotta be this kind of a father. And when we fall short of these ideals, then, well, what do we do with that? Well, you can either feel guilty or inferior, or you can just see it as a data point and be curious. And then from that, it's like, well, what do I need to learn from this and what adjustments do I need to make? It's a little bit like there's times to detach from emotion so you can see things more objectively. So, because I'm a father and my kids are all in college, but the times in my life where we were in, I would say cash flow duress, I would feel a tremendous amount of guilt because it's like you are not providing for your family. And granted, okay, I went into this career path where you don't make a lot. At the same time, that was my choice to go into that. Like, so dealing then with all this guilt and shame, especially men. I mean, men are shaped by shame, right? As we grow up in terms of what we're supposed to be. So when we don't live up to that, they're just like, yeah, what do you do with that? Even when I went through my divorce, I just remember always feeling guilty, 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 which is just a form of judgment, right? On yourself, like you're so terrible as a person. But when you can detach from that and just be Well, no, what's really at play here, it now you can think clearly and make better decisions. So in, let's say, money, for example, like, okay, you've been really broke, whatever, the last few months. So instead of feeling like you're a bad father, let's just think of solutions. Like, okay, just this is the data point. You need more money. How are you going to make more money? Okay, well, I should do X, Y, and Z. Great. So let's not waste a lot of time. A little bit like climbing a mountain and then an avalanche hits you and takes you back down. Well, when the avalanche hits you, you can ride it all the way to the bottom and then you got to climb back up again, or just get out of it faster. And that comes with starting to be more aware and attuned with what's happening, right? When the energy of that emotion starts to grab you, sort of like when the wave grabs the surfer, but you see sometimes a surfer will not like the wave and then they'll pull out of the wave.
Mhm.
And that's really such the key is this pulling back out of the wave and just watch that energy roll into the beach. And now I can think and make a better decision about my life.
For sure. I think that we're all gonna have the emotions come up and the human things happen and like a disagreement with our significant other or whatever, but it's how fast you can right the ship and how fast you can learn to navigate those situations, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
yeah. So what else do I need to know about your book, or does anyone listening need to know about your book? Can we just talk a little bit more about the book itself?
So the book covers the story of Riley, and Riley stumbles into this village, like I mentioned, and then finds out that they've been called to climb this mountain. And sort of after an initial refusal to do it, they realize, oh, this is really what I need to do. But as they climb this mountain, that's when they begin to realize that their life has been living in these loops that they didn't know. And what we don't know actually controls us. And so Riley's able to start making better decisions to think, well, wait, but this is how I want to live my life. And how do I deal with that anxiety? And part of the journey involves reclaiming your identity. And so one way I talk about this in the book, when you see those photos, but then you look closer and the photo is made up of like 1,000 small
Mhm.
photos,
Mhm.
identities like that, right? Like our identity is just made up of these 1,000 stories. And the stories are just data points, but then it's the meaning that we give to it. So, one of my data points is I grew up on a small cattle ranch. I was a redhead. I'm an introvert. Well, those are just data points, but what do they mean? So the introvert can be, well, this is why I'm I hate networking events and I don't like people, or I'm an introvert. That's why I'm so good connecting one on one. Whichever meaning you choose, but one's empowering and one's disempowering. And the more disempowering meanings we have of our stories, the weaker our identity is to be able to live the life we want to live. And so a lot of life is reclaiming those identities to go, wait a minute, yeah, I grew up, whatever, I grew up on a cattle ranch, but that actually gave me, here's the benefit that gave me, right? Yeah, I had the habit of people pleasing when I was younger, but that's made me so much more in tune with how people are doing. So it's reclaiming your identity and then traveling light and unburdening yourself by forgiving the people that have been in your past and forgiving yourself. And those are some of the core messages of the book. Um, Ultimately, as Riley tries to climb this peak.
Yeah. Why'd you call him Riley?
I actually called the character Riley because I wanted, it's a name that's both male or female. So
Oh, I
we
like that.
I worked
Yeah.
hard to not assign a gender to Riley. And the cool thing is some of the people that have read the first few chapters, and they've written me and said, "Oh, I like how she did this," and someone else writes, "I like how he did this."
I love that.
That's exactly what I had wanted.
Oh, yeah. You want everyone to see themselves in it, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
to 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 see it from that identity place. And that's really incredible. I'm excited to read the whole thing. Congratulations. And I know it comes out August 5th. And so I hope everybody will check that out because it's always powerful to have a story like that that can inspire you so much. There's so many that I've read that do that for me, and you have a really great way of getting your points across. So, just before we go, I like to ask a few like little just day-to-day questions. Like, do you have a personal mantra that you live by? I'm just curious.
I do. I have a couple of different mantras, and some are situational, others are more. My main mantra is that I'm all in on me. So
Oh.
especially when I run into resistance, I just go all in on me, right? Like, or I believe in me, and
Mhm.
it just keeps that doubt away. And then when I go into a group setting, sometimes I just have to remind myself I'm not here to make friends. That
You're here to
still mean
show
it's
up.
just it counters the habit that still lingers of people pleasing and then just going in. I'm not here to make friends, and but I'm here to serve and contribute and have a good time. But you know, my survival's not hinged on these people's opinions. I'm not here to make friends.
That's powerful. I think that's really powerful. Yeah. I mean, I live with a speaker and a nonprofit founder who was bullied, and he still has these tendencies to just want to please and want to fit in and want to include, and like when you just check yourself, like, I'm great. I'm just great right here. Like, everything's, I got me, right? All
Yeah.
in on me. That's a really cool one. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just curious, who inspires you, if you can think of anyone? I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but do you have anybody that leaps to mind when you think of somebody that you really look to that inspires you?
So many people inspire me, certainly my close friends, my kids. I think of all my kids are
Oh,
college age, and
yeah,
I think
nice.
I think life is more complicated and therefore difficult for them than it was when I was their age. And so they soldier through, they inspire me. And people like you who are out here making the world a better place and using
Good
your
answer,
time.
James. No, great answer. No, that's
No,
very
but
sweet.
using your time to, interview people. I mean, you think about how many, I'm sure you've spent many times where you put stuff out there and you think, did anyone watch that or did anyone read
Hello.
that? Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Sure, it's part of
But
it.
you still show up and do it. And, I'm in that same industry where you just have to keep showing up and doing it. So what inspires me is when I see people showing up and doing it. Anytime people are pushing through, right, that tough section on the mountain, that's inspiring.
Me too. When I see somebody out for a walk or something like that, taking a drink of their water, I'm like, "Yes, queen, hydrate. You're walking," like, and I found, like, I don't think I used to feel that way. I think there used to be something in me that might lean toward judgment, and I think it's like training ourselves to just get inspired in the moment when you see somebody doing it. You're like, "Yes, that's what we're doing. We're showing up," and it plus it just feels good. It just feels good to sit in that space.
Everyone needs more cheerleaders for sure, right? Everyone needs more people in their
Seriously.
corner because sometimes we're not even in our own corner.
Oh my god, yeah. Sometimes, right, like, I would say, yes, it's very easy to get, like, misaligned from your corner. 100%. So, okay, as we are wrapping up today, and thank you so much for this. You had so many just beautiful moments of wisdom, and I can't wait to share. And I'm just curious, what would you like to leave everybody with before we go? Or what's on your heart, even to reiterate before we go? So,
I would just circle back to the point I made when I was talking about the funeral, not to sound negative, but truly, 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 right? What counts, what people talk about us after is going to be the impact that we had on them. And the world is. I've never felt like the world being darker than it has been in the last number of months. And whenever darkness seems to be stronger, then everyone just needs to turn up the light. And whether that's
mm,
just complimenting someone on their outfit, being extra nice to the barista, talking to the person in the elevator. I mean, just bring your light. We need more and more people to do that.
when it seems darkest, turn off the light. That almost makes me cry. That's so. Yes, yes. Because, like, sometimes I think you can get mired in that, and then you can't see any light, and you've got to turn it up, and you are we can do it. It's possible. Oh, That's really beautiful. How can everyone follow you and get your book and all the things, which will be in the show notes, but maybe you could
Yeah.
let everyone know?
Thank you for asking. To get the book, of course, you can go to any of the main booksellers, but the book's website is iwillclimb.com. So if you go to iwillclimb.com, and from there, you can find your way to my leadership website if you want. But just for the book for now, iwillclimb.com. And of course, we're all over the socials. So
Yes, and it is all gonna be in the show notes. Everyone can click through, and if you're, early, then the first 3 chapters are there for you to download, so go right ahead, and then, you can continue when the book comes out on August 5th. So, thank you, James. Thank you so much. I, so enjoyed this today.
thank you, Amy. Me too.
And thank you so much for being here today. That really hit me, that last message. The darker it is, like, I'm getting choked up. The more we have to turn up the light. It reminded me of what we say at the end of these episodes. I'm getting tears in my eyes. What I always say at the end of these episodes, keep shining bright, right? It can feel challenging sometimes, but it is true. Those are the times we need more light, and you gotta be it to see it, right? You gotta be the light even when it's hard, but we can all remember those people that shine for us, right? And sometimes we don't feel so shiny, and that's okay too. But wow, oh, I loved that. I'm gonna do that journaling thing too. That 30 days, that's really cool. What a cool trick. What if we all tried that? I'm gonna try it and get back to you. I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna plug it into my good buddy ChatGPT. So, thank you for being here today. Really, truly, that's all so inspiring and full of mindset shifts that I just reframes like all day long. Man, I'm all about it. And I know you are too because you're here. So thank you. And it takes training, right? It just takes keeping doing it. What I don't know why this just popped in my head, but I'm gonna follow the call. And one of the tricks that I like is just asking ourselves questions and being ridiculous about it. So if you're like, I don't know, cooking or making coffee or something like that, that's a time I like to do it when I'm puttering around the house and I'll just start or folding laundry or something. I'll be like, why is life so great? Why is my podcast blowing up? Why is or like, why is my coping mechanism such a superpower now, right? Like, we could take all the things that he talked about and just blow them into something that makes us laugh, and then we are showing up for life in a whole new way and training ourselves and building these habits that he was just talking about of reframing, of how can I see this as a strength, of how can I keep growing and taking those next steps. Even when we don't know what to do, you have the power of your voice and can ask yourself a new question, right? Sometimes the step can be as small as that. If you find yourself stuck, the step you're trying to take isn't small enough. That's badass. That's a good one. Oh man, I gotta go back through that episode and listen to this. So thank you so much for showing up today. I love you so much. And that was a really good conversation, and I am just very, very here for it and here for you, and, what do I need to tell you before we go? Oh, follow the show, go to YouTube, all those kind of things, follow on YouTube, and my hair, the Collective ATX, I'm about to get all new extensions, I'm pretty excited, but man, they look good today. I curled them intentionally today, so yeah, it looks good, right? They can be yours at the Collective ATX, the very best in hair extensions. Connect with me too. Reply to my newsletter anytime. I will get that reply and see it and read it. And I would love to know your thoughts, your feedback, anytime, any place. Review the show if you haven't. I'm super grateful as we keep building. And yeah, when it seems the darkest, we got to turn up the light. So don't be afraid to turn up your own light. It's okay, right? So I think sometimes we can feel like, oh, I'm too happy. Oh, is everyone going to judge me when there's so much turmoil in the world or things seem bad? Is it okay to be a bright light, to smile, to find joy? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. In fact, it's crucial and important, right? Hey, trust me, I've been on this planet for 52 years. I've seen plenty of dark times, and now I know that we keep going. The world keeps spinning, and we keep on, got to put on our pants and all the things, right? Got to take a shower. And so, yeah, the world keeps on spinning. So keep shining bright. I love you. Love you so much. Till next time.
Thank you so much for being here. Please rate, review, and follow us, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Keep shining bright.